Hey guys, welcome back to another Spotlight Sunday episode where we take a closer look at four-wheel drive or camping products to see if they're right for your needs. Now today we're actually focusing on a bit of gear that I've been using a ton over the past 4 or 5 months as we've been traveling throughout the Kimberley and of course across to Victoria as well. And that's my 12-volt control hub from iTechworld. So to kick things off, if you haven't seen control hubs like these before, they basically combine all your essential ingredients of any good 12-volt setup into a ready-made box you can then install on your four-wheel drive or canopy. We have a fuse block giving us 6 protected circuits to connect our accessories to, 5 rocker switches that come pre-wired to those fuses, 2 cigarette lighter power outlets, 4 USB outlets including 1 USB-C fast charge port, a battery voltage and percentage gauge, a bunch of Anderson connections to get power in and out of the control hub, including a dedicated solar input, rubber grommets on all 4 sides to run your wiring through. And for this particular model, I also have a built-in 40 amp DCDC charger that comes pre-wired to those Anderson connections, but you can also get these control hubs with a smaller 25 amp DCDC charger or with no charger at all, so you can add your own. That being said, unless you already have a DC-DC charger you're wanting to use, I'd probably recommend going for one of the models that has the charger built in because A, you're actually going to save yourself a little bit of money rather than buying the control hub and the DC-DC charger separately, and B, all that wiring is already done for you, so it's just one less job to do. The installation and wiring will be a slightly different process for your particular vehicle, but the basic idea with these control hubs is that you find somewhere to mount the main box using the 4 pre-drilled holes, run a cable from your main battery to the Anderson inlet marked as alternator input, using a 3-pin Anderson plug if your vehicle has a smart alternator, and connect your auxiliary battery to any of these 4 Anderson outlets. Now, whenever you run wires to your battery, whether that's your starter battery under your bonnet or your auxiliary battery in the back of your four-wheel drive, make sure you also install an appropriately rated fuse or circuit breaker to keep everything protected, and install that as close to the positive terminal as you possibly can. So for example, my control hub here is hooked up to my auxiliary battery, which is kind of just behind this wall here through this 60 amp circuit breaker. That's pretty much all there is to getting the control hub working, and whenever you want to add any accessories, all you need to do is run the wiring through one of the 4 rubber grommets, connect the positive to the only spare terminal on one of the available switches, connect the negative to the earth block, and you're good to go. Alrighty, so as with every product we feature on the Spotlight Sunday episodes, there's things I like and things I dislike as well. So let's see how the iTechworld control hub stacks up, starting with the things that I like. Number 1 is pretty obvious, and it's the main reason I chose to install one in my canopy setup, and that's that these control hubs save you so much time when doing your own 12-volt wiring. Now, I've actually done 2 full 12-volt installs here on the channel, one without a control hub and now one with, and I can tell you firsthand that using one saves you literally hours of time because you don't need to find separate places to mount all of your components or run all of the wiring to connect them all. Secondly, 12-volt setups can get pretty messy pretty quickly. Trust me, I know from previous builds, and control hubs like these are a great way to keep things looking pretty well organized with minimal effort. There's plenty of space inside the control hub for all your wiring, with 90% of that done for you already. So when it's installed, you only really see what you need to see, which makes for a neater overall setup. The third thing I like about this control hub is it gives me nice, easy access to all my wiring should something go wrong. Now, this is one of those things that if all goes to plan, this won't matter to you, but if anything goes wrong with your wiring, you'll be so grateful that all you have to do is undo a few screws and you can get right in there and see exactly what's going on. Now, again, this is something I've got first-hand experience with because with my previous setup, I used to have to pull off my entire headboard every time there was an issue with the wiring because all my components were installed separately. So this is a welcome change for me. And finally, I reckon control hubs are actually a pretty cost-effective way to do your 12-volt setup because honestly, if you price up all these components separately, you'll probably be spending a similar amount, if not more, to build something similar yourself, except you'll be spending all that time to get it working and it will potentially still look messier. Now, this might not be the case if you don't need all this stuff on the front of the box here, so it's worth kind of considering what your personal requirements are when it comes to a 12-volt system, because if you just need something to run your fridge through an inline fuse, for example, then something more basic might be the right choice for you. Okay, nothing's perfect, so moving on to my dislikes, and number one is that the included battery monitor isn't super accurate for lithium batteries, as it's just a voltage-based system, so it can only be really used as a rough guide at best, and even then you'll have to make sure that all your accessories are turned off before you check the gauge, otherwise your reading will be out. For my system, I installed a shunt-based battery monitor instead, which is the most accurate way to measure your battery level and usage, giving you an exact measurement of how many amps have entered or left your battery at any given moment. It would be awesome if these control hubs could incorporate a similar system, but to be honest, I get why they don't. Shunts require you to connect every single accessory and charge it to them, so if someone was to install a control hub but then wire their inverter, for example, straight to the battery, that shunt would no longer be accurate. So I suppose in the perfect world, I'd love to see a shunt-based system in these control hubs with some super clear instructions on how they work and how to use them. But in reality, maybe just doing away with this voltage-based monitor and lowering the price by a little bit, allowing people to install their own monitoring solution would be the best option. Secondly, I think the screws that connect this face panel onto the control hub could be a little bit more securely mounted, or perhaps of a slightly thicker gauge. So while we're doing the Gibb River Road, the thread section of this bottom right screw started to free spin within the control hub, meaning I couldn't tighten that screw head there, and that left this corner kind of flapping for the rest of that trip. I was able to use my riv nut tool when I got home to essentially retighten that thread, but I reckon something of a larger gauge would have prevented that problem in the first place and given it a bit more strength. One other thing I did want to mention, which isn't a dislike, it's just something to be mindful of, is where you choose to mount your control hub. So obviously I've mounted mine up here, which for the most part is working really well. But one thing I didn't think about is that when I pack this car to the limit for a trip away, it's not too hard for something to fall and turn these switches off. One of which is my fridge, which would be an absolute disaster if we rocked up to camp and the fridge had been turned off in transit. So before heading away for the Gibb River Road, I did actually add a bit of sticky tape here to hold those switches on, so there was no chance of them getting bumped off. Again, no fault whatsoever of the control hub, just something to be mindful of depending on where you mount yours. Well, those are my thoughts on the iTechworld 12-volt control hub with 40 amp DC-DC charger. I hope this video has helped to answer any questions you guys might have had about this system. And if you are planning on getting one for your setup or any other iTechworld gear for that matter, chucking in the code EXPLOREBOUND at checkout will save you 5% and also help the channel out a bunch as well. I also just wanted to give a special shout out to the channel's latest Explorer tier Patreon member, Taylor McGregor, who Bianca and I both had the absolute pleasure of meeting at the Melbourne 4-wheel drive show. We've been chatting on Instagram already, but I just wanted to extend my thanks here as well, because honestly your support really means the world to us. And with that, this video comes to an end, so thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you got any questions about the control hub, this, that, or anything else in the comment section down below, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.